Hello everybody, I'm Conquering History Games, and welcome to Progress Report number 10 of the Kalterkrieg Shadow of the Second Weltkrieg mod. So kind of similar to how earlier, if you're watching this on the Kalterkrieg playlist, which I encourage everybody to do, always linked in the description of these videos, where we went from Progress Report 2 to I think 12 so we could do Canada. In the same way, we're jumping Progress Report numbers just so that we could do the New England ones back to back, because I was seeing people say, yeah, just do both New England parts and then resume doing the stuff in chronological order. So after this, we'll then go back to Progress Report number 7, the Danubian one, and so forth. Anyway, let's just go ahead and jump into it, assuming first-person reading mode now. Hello all, this is Kennedy here to welcome you back to New England for Progress Report Part 2. New England development happened mostly over the summer, and I've finally gotten around to polishing it enough to write this. Since the beginning... Okay, I'm going to actually skip this part, my bad. We're happy where the tag is. So, last time, we discussed the political situation in New England up until the 1953 elections, and briefly touched on the New England economy, which is doing very well, and the New England armed forces, which are not. This progress report will talk about the political situation through the end of our 0.1 content, now 1956. You will still be able to elect a president in 1957, but there will be no content for them in 0.1. We will also discuss the economy decisions, which I teased previously, as well as the armed forces tree. The 1953 elections. To refresh you all, the 1953 elections were between Republican Raymond Baldwin running for a second term and Democrat W. Averill Harriman running to unseat him. While Harriman is favored, Baldwin can win. The Democrats are going through a transition in this time, as I outlined in the last progress report, and are becoming more socially liberal and the center-left Liberal Party we generally consider them to be today. The Republicans will run governor of upstate New York, Thomas Dewey, as their nominee. Dewey is more liberal than Baldwin, aiming to increase education funding, trimming the bureaucratic fat, and improve the efficiency of the government. While he is fiscally conservative, he is definitely to the left of Baldwin. Okay. The Democrats will either re-nominate Harriman for a second term or nominate Herbert Lemon, senator from upstate New York. Lemon would be the first Jewish president of New England or the United States and represents the Democratic Old Guard in New York. The Democrats also plan on heavily expanding education spending, taking it further than the Republicans, and plan on growing New England's reputation as having the best education system in the world. Both parties will expand the Federal Highway Act as well as be forced to grapple with civil rights issues. While de jure segregation does not exist in any part of New England, African Americans still face heavy de facto discrimination. Both parties will also aim to continue to stimulate the post-war boom. The Delaware Commission will present its findings on the state of the economy in the new states of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and the player will be able to embark on a number of projects to rebuild in the newest states and expand the economies of the old states. The New England economy is the strongest in the Accord, and it will also have the opportunity to assist the Montgomery Plan in the rebuilding of Europe. This is the full 1953 political tree, and this is Kennedy's favorite flavor event, the reformation of Major League Baseball. Alright, the New England Armed Forces. As outlined in the previous progress report, the New Englander Armed Forces are not in a good state. They barely had any experience in the Second American Civil War, and just a few volunteer divisions saw action in the Second Weltkrieg. Yet as the Kalterkrieg begins, it has become clear that New England must play a vital role, especially navally. In addition, as tensions rise with the American Union State, American commanders have come to realize that the New England Army must be the spearhead through which a potential invasion must happen. To that end, once the Military Review Act is passed by, the Military Review Act is passed by Congress following the 1949 elections, Army reforms can begin. The player can choose to modify an artillery-based doctrine, mostly based on Canadian Army doctrine, and can mostly focus on killing as much of the Union State's vast manpower pools as possible. They could also opt for a tank-based combined arms doctrine, which will see New England develop their own main battle tank, the M42 Lafayette, and aim to break the American Union State with a fast armored spearhead to liberate D.C. and the industrial steel belt. The New England Navy is perhaps the most competent branch at game start, with a significant fleet already built and 6 more carriers ready to come off the line a few months into the game. 3 of these carriers, excuse me, gosh, I'm stumbling today. Carriers will be given to Canada, but with the 3 new carriers, that would make New England one of the world's largest naval powers. There are 2 main naval projects to occupy New England during the 1950s. The first is laying down the next generation of carriers, 3 of which again are for Canada. The other is a discovery pioneered by Admiral Hyman Rickover, the invention of nuclear propulsion submarines. New England will be at the forefront of nuclear propulsion. The New England Air Force is in okay shape, but their development is definitely behind the Pacific States. While they have chosen to abandon Bell fighters and exclusively use Republican Vaunt, their bomber development has been catastrophic. After the B-12 Rainbow, New England's only native strategic bomber, they will be forced to turn to Boeing licenses from the Pacific States of America for their future strategic bombing developments. This is the full Army tree. This is the full Air tree. And this is the full Navy tree. Alright, civil rights in 1957. The civil rights movement is something that New England must begin to grapple with as the 50s begin to wrap up. While segregation is not nearly as bad as in the South, and is not codified into law, it does rear its head in a number of places. New England is very proud of its legacy of abolitionism, and will now start with a spirit bearing that name. But many of these civil rights activists see New England as hypocritical, criticizing the Union state while tolerating racism under its nose. The player will have to decide how to grapple with these forces and decide how to fulfill the agenda of these activists while appeasing New England's mostly white population. No solution is likely to completely satisfy both groups, though, and just because New England's attitude towards civil rights is generally more positive than the rest of the country, does not mean these tensions can't boil over into a larger political crisis if handled improperly. Just like the American Union state, though, civil rights will not occur in a vacuum, with the events of the other American successors and their relationship with the rising movement being able to affect New England and their own movement. A particular point of contention will be the status of minority refugees in New England, since the end of the war did not mark the end of movement across the borders, and desire for minority groups to leave the relatively more contentious Union state. Handling this problem, while not a directly important project for the politicians of the 1950s, will be something that may become a larger issue down the line. This is the Philadelphia Transit Union Strike event chain, which will happen in 52, apparently. The 1957 election in particular will be played out with civil rights as a backdrop. The Democrats will nominate Massachusetts Senator John F. Kennedy, regardless of whether it is Lemon in office or Harriman finishing up his second term. Lemon will not run again, citing his age. JFK's running mate will be Pennsylvania Senator Joseph S. Clark Jr. The Grand Old Party can run Thomas Dewey for his second term, but if Dewey did not win in 1953, Governor of upstate New York Nelson Rockefeller will take up the baton, with Connecticut Senator Prescott Bush as his running mate. This is the almost full New England focus tree. Some finishing thoughts. One piece of the puzzle missing from this progress report is the Third American Civil War. While we are working on that development, I don't want to reveal too much, as it is still being worked on, but it will all be covered in a progress report of its own in the future. As a whole, New England is meant to be the industrial engine of the Accord, spreading its wealth and power around and aiming to complement Canada's power projection using its navy. I hope you all appreciated this progress report, and we will see you soon. So some interesting stuff here, that's for sure. The education buff here of a 12% boost to research speed, as well as the technology sharing bonus, is pretty sweet. What was something else I wanted to look at? Yeah, the economic projects look interesting, although it looks like it's going to really chew up your political power. So I wonder if there's going to maybe be the option early on where you can get that one minister that gives you a 15% buff to your political power. But I don't know, there might be other things that are available as well. Being able to help build Europe is interesting. I wonder how high of a priority that's going to be for players. I always like whenever you have the democratic systems in the games where there is overlap. So from what I'm seeing here, it looks like whether you are going with Thomas Dewey and the Republicans or you're going with one of the Democrats, you're actually going to be able to found NASA here. That wasn't brought up in the progress report, but I did notice it. So that looks pretty cool. Yeah, Major League Baseball, that sort of stuff is fun. I want to see who's getting mentioned. Phil Rizzuto, Stan Musial, Mickey Ferris, Ralph Branca, Raymond Baldwin. That's fun. But there was another one. Yeah, these carriers. This carriers is really interesting, and I hope that players don't delete this when they're starting as New England games. I usually do that out of habit when I'm playing a country. Is like whatever ships are queued up, I'll usually delete them. But yeah, these are going to be coming online in just March of 1948. So you've only got to wait like 10 weeks, and you're going to get a bunch more carriers. So hopefully players do not delete that. Oh gosh, I didn't mean to do that. What the heck? This is a zoom in. Oh, what the heck? Yeah, so interesting stuff. The abolition legacy, I'm glad that they like that because, you know, it was, especially Massachusetts, that was the hotbed of abolitionism in the pre-Civil War era. And yeah, Third American Civil War, not a whole lot here. Now, we might remember from earlier progress reports that they said that the Third American Civil War is not inevitable. So I can understand why maybe it's a bit of a smaller tree right now. But also, you got to figure that when you're at war, you're going to be working on your military stuff. So you're going to be going through the army trees and things like that. So I don't think this actually needs to be that big. But yeah, that's it. Those are the two New England progress reports that are out as of right now. The next one I should be uploading will be going back, like I said before, to progress report number 7. We'll take a look at Danubia. I'm Conquering History Games. Thanks for joining me. Subscribe if you haven't already, and consider becoming a member of the channel. See you next time. Bye.